What would happen if a League Sweat, who's basically never played Valorant, dedicated 1 full month to learning the game? Could I learn the movement? Could I top frag and get match MVP? And most importantly, is Valorant better than League of Legends? Well, there's only one way to find out. Before I could improve, I needed a baseline. Over the next 30 days, I'd be tracking my highest skill game, how many aces I got, and every new skill I learned along the way. Honestly, going into my first game, I was feeling pretty confident, and that confidence only grew when I instantly got my first kill. I mean, I'd watched hours of Valorant guides, I knew what most of the agents did, I recognized the maps, and my aim honestly wasn't that bad. So all of that had to count for something, right? Not exactly. Because after the first kill, everything started going downhill fast. I quickly realized everyone else knew way more about the game than I did, the guns felt impossible to control, which meant I had to learn recoil fast if I wanted any chance of surviving. And that was a lot harder than it looked. Instead of dominating the lobby like I imagined, I spent most rounds dying almost instantly, and I genuinely had no idea what I was doing wrong. By the end of the night, my best game was only 7 kills, I had 0 aces, and honestly, I hadn't learned a single skill. I went to bed completely overwhelmed, and by the next morning, I was starting to think I'd made a huge mistake. I wanted to play a new game because I'd really been unhappy with where League of Legends was at. The game just hadn't been fun for months, but maybe Valorant was just too hard. And maybe I should just go back to the game I'd spent thousands of hours playing, because at least I was good at it.
You serious?
But unfortunately, it was too late for that. I should probably mention, there were rules for this challenge. Rule number 1, I cannot get help from friends. Rule number 2, I'm only playing normal games, mostly because I don't have ranked unlocked yet, and honestly, ranked kinda scares me.
For 2 days!
You're garbage,
I can
bro.
buy it.
And rule number 3, I have 1 month to train. Now, to prep for this month, I did a lot of research, and instead of constantly queuing up where I need to learn maps, lineups, mechanics, and everything else all at once, my plan for the first few days was to simplify. To simplify, I decided I would focus only on mechanics first, by practicing in the firing range and getting into as many gunfights as possible in deathmatch. Then, once I wasn't a complete bot anymore, I could finally graduate to learning the actual game. And the first mechanic I wanted to learn was jump peeking. Now, honestly it looked pretty easy, just press a few keys and...
Oh, brother, this guy stinks!
Okay, this was going to be a lot harder than I thought. Minutes went by as I struggled to learn the right technique, but after a ton of failures, I was finally able to jump peek around 90% of the time. And after learning this new movement skill, I felt ready to play against real players. Now, I'd love to say I hit the ground running, but it was more like walking, because getting better was going to take time. I still didn't know how to use all the guns, the abilities each agent had were still confusing, and the jump peeks I spent hours learning were actually pretty hard to use in the real games. But it wasn't all bad, because I found out I really liked using the Phantom because I can just spam through smokes. I also realized just how important headshots were in this game, since they instantly kill. And then something happened that would change the course of history. Okay, it wasn't that crazy. It was literally just a couple nice headshots, but it motivated me to keep going. On day 2, I learned that I could change my crosshair, which honestly helped a ton. We have a circle. Then I learned how you're actually supposed to shoot guns in Valorant. Apparently you're supposed to burst or tap fire rifles instead of just spraying consistently. While SMGs are basically meant to be running gunned. Then I learned how to slow down my shooting, which helped me hit headshots way more consistently. I was on a roll, and honestly it felt like my progress was never going to stop. However, on day 3, I started noticing something. My aim was actually pretty decent when I only focused on shooting. But the second I tried using abilities as well, I got overwhelmed and missed all my shots. On day 4, I decided to double down by learning how to aim while using abilities at the same time. I practiced the basics like strafing while shooting, and also started working on harder mechanics like flicking. Now, I knew I wasn't going to become 10s overnight, but I figured if I practiced long enough, eventually aiming and using abilities together would become muscle memory. Or at least that's what I hoped. And honestly, when I thought about it, that's why I was becoming obsessed with Valorant. There was just so much to learn. On one hand, it was probably the hardest game I'd ever played, but on the other hand, it was insanely satisfying to hit clean headshots. This game had a real skill gap, and honestly, coming from League of Legends, that felt like a breath of fresh air. I could definitely see why people love this game.
What the f are you doing, bro?
Well, I guess every FPS game also comes with a terrible community. But anyways, after 5 straight days of practicing mechanics, I knew it was finally time to graduate to the normal game mode. I still had a lot to improve on, and there were still tons of skills I wanted to learn, but I was on a deadline with this challenge. And honestly, maybe it wouldn't be that much harder than deathmatch. Okay, maybe normal games weren't that bad, because somehow I ended up dropping 28 kills, and honestly, the enemy team kind of felt like bots. Now sure, I still had absolutely no idea what I was doing half the time, but for the first time in the challenge, it actually felt like all the practice was paying off. Even though I was getting kills, I could still tell my map knowledge was terrible. There were so many angles to clear, weird corners people could hide in, and every map felt completely different. So even after a huge game, I knew I still had a lot to learn. I spent the rest of the day going through every map, learning entryways, common angles, and how players usually pushed onto each site. Some maps even had giant doors you could interact with. Other maps had breakable walls, and after being completely confused for days, I finally figured out what those weird black orbs around the map actually do. Apparently they give you ultimate points, which probably would have been very useful to know earlier, and by the time I went to bed that night, I finally felt like I was starting to become a real Valorant player. My first game was an unrated game on Breeze, playing as Phoenix, and honestly I was doing pretty well. I pushed the site like a duelist should, we got the bomb down, and I isolated my fights to pick up 2 kills in the first round. Round 2 came along and we were on our buy round, and the enemies were on their eco round. We ended up losing that round. I think it was just because we kept taking fights solo. The rest of the game was going pretty well though. Until I ended up in a 1v2 situation, I got way too nervous and completely whiffed all my shots. And then my team surrendered, for no reason at all. Was that because of me? Why were you fiffing? I queued up again, this time on Fracture. And honestly, Fracture was insanely confusing. There were random pathways everywhere, a zipline running through the middle of the map, and half the time I had no idea where the enemies could even come from. This game actually went pretty well. Well, except for the first round. I may have accidentally flashed myself. Oh, I just flashed myself. On the second round, I swung the enemy jet, won the fight instantly, picked up a Vandal off the ground, and cleaned up the rest of the round. Then came the third round, which was probably one of my best rounds yet.
That's done.
Oh! Oh! Wait, give me the ace. No! Frick! That was so close. Now, I may have not gotten the ace, but at least I ended the game with 27 kills and another match MVP. Another match MVP. But I didn't have time to celebrate, because it was already time to learn another new map, Corrode. And honestly, this map was really cool. I thought playing well on a completely unfamiliar map was going to be difficult, but somehow I was still popping off. I was also starting to understand how useful Phoenix's abilities actually were. This game still felt relatively easy. Although I could definitely tell I was starting to face better opponents. Actually, who am I kidding? I was probably still in bot lobbies. By the end of the day, I had dropped a 27 kill game, earned 6 match MVPs, and learned 3 new skills. At this point, after improving so quickly, I started thinking this challenge might actually be easy. I mean, surely, getting 30 kills in a game was completely realistic now. Because obviously, Valorant was always going to feel this easy. Yeah, about that. Day 8 started horribly. First of all, I just realized most people just don't use their microphones. So, how's everyone's day going? But despite that, I knew struggling was part of improving. That's how I got better at League. So I figured the same thing had to apply to Valorant. And after rewatching some of my gameplay, I realized I'd made a huge mistake with my training. I'd spent so much time practicing mechanics that I never actually learned how to properly play the game. I knew how to aim, but I barely understood smokes, site executes, clearing angles, utility usage, and lineups. Or even what half the agents actually did.
Something is dropping down. Orbital strike up over the top.
The only character I genuinely understood was Phoenix. So I spent some time in the firing range, testing different agents and abilities. I even started watching YouTube guides, trying to learn actual strategies for specific characters, and that's when I found Sova. The darts and the drone seemed super helpful, and the ability to be able to see players through smokes, it seemed super satisfying. Now, realistically, Sova was probably not my kind of agent. I liked running in and taking fights, but maybe playing a slower character would help me stop dying so much. So after watching a few Sova guides, I queued up and locked him in. This was probably the worst game I've ever played. I mean, the clips speak for itself. Sheesh.
Player standing.
What? Whoa! Whoa!
Attackers win.
Nice job.
No!
That's right. Have a nice day, guys.
Even though I had a bad game, I had a lot of fun playing Sova. Maybe Sova was the piece I've been missing this entire time. Over the next few days, I got into a routine, where I practiced my mechanics in the morning, and then alternated from deathmatches and unrated in the afternoon. Despite its downsides, the deathmatch modes let me practice my aim and get into a lot of gunfights, which helped me lock in when I played unrated. But after days and days of grinding, I was starting to hit a wall. My mechanics were steadily improving to help me win one-on-one gunfights, but I was still dying a lot because of my dumb decision making. Learning new things like droning before entering the site and asking teammates to smoke high activity areas was helping me and the team to win, but it felt like the other teams were just getting better. I knew it was time to make a drastic change, because up until this point, I'd basically been playing Valorant like a brainless aim trainer. Sure, I could win fights now, but the second I ran into players who actually understood positioning, utility, and teamwork, I got destroyed. And honestly, it was frustrating, because mechanically, I felt better than ever. I was hitting more headshots, my movement was cleaner, and I finally understood how to use abilities without completely panicking. But none of that mattered if I kept making terrible decisions. I'd overpeak fights for no reason, I'd push smokes like an idiot, sometimes I'd even drone out a sight perfectly, and then immediately ignore all the information I just gathered. It was like my hands were improving faster than my brain. So instead of spending hours grinding mechanics again, I decided it was finally time to learn how to actually play Valorant, and that meant studying. I started watching high-ranked gameplay, trying to understand why players rotated when they did, how they held angles, and when they chose to fight. At first, I thought high-level Valorant would look insanely flashy, but honestly, most of the time, it looked patient. The players weren't running around taking random fights, they were constantly gathering information, setting up teammates, and only taking fights that actually favored them. And slowly, I started realizing something. Valorant isn't really a game about aiming, it's a game about making the other person uncomfortable. Using utility to force bad fights, holding weird off angles, making enemies second guess themselves. And once I understood that, everything started to click. So by day 20, I was ready to lock in. I hopped into the practice range, warmed up my aim, and immediately queued up for an unrated game on Split while playing Sova. Now, this game felt completely different from anything I'd ever played before. The enemy team wasn't even playing normal Valorant. I mean, seriously, what is this? There were smokes everywhere. Every time the round started, the entire site would just disappear. I had no idea what was happening. We lost the first few rounds almost instantly, and honestly, I had zero clue how I was supposed to defend against this. It felt like history was just repeating itself, so eventually I came up with a plan. If they were going to keep flooding through smokes every single round, then I'd just sit inside the smokes with a stinger and wait for them. And honestly, it worked way better than it should have. I managed to kill the Brimstone, steal his Odin, and then run down the harbor afterward, before immediately getting destroyed by a jet that snuck up behind me. But even after that, the rounds just kept slipping away from us. Every single round felt chaotic. And not having a sentinel to slow down their pushes definitely wasn't helping. Eventually it was our turn to attack. And somehow the enemy team just pushed us exactly the same way they'd been attacking earlier. At this point, I genuinely couldn't tell if they were trolling or just geniuses. Either way, I was confused. Fortunately, I was still able to get a couple kills here and there, but it never really felt like we were in control of the game. Then round 14 came around. The score was 4-9. It felt impossible to come back. My team didn't really seem interested in winning anymore either. So at that point, I just focused on doing the best I could. One round, I managed to sneak through the smokes and somehow make it onto site for a plant, only to immediately realize I was stuck in a 1v5 situation. Yeah, that didn't last very long.
Nice try.
Round after round, we kept losing, so eventually I just accepted reality. This game was cooked. At that point, I figured I might as well just make the best of it. So me and Mix ordered a coffee.
If this menu was like in real life, which one would you want to order?
Honestly, I'd probably just get the black coffee. Probably just the coffee. I like it black, bro.
What do you think the Hog's Creeko is? Like the fifth one down.
It's probably like a frog. Wait, where? Hog. Cheese.
What does that say?
Oh, frick.
Player standing. Spike down A.
At least I got team MVP. I queued up again, hoping a game like that would never happen again. But this time on Harbor. And somehow, it was even worse. Every mistake I thought I'd fix came right back. I was losing fights I should have won, missing shots I'd hit a week ago,
Okay.
and by the end of the game, it felt like I'd learned absolutely nothing, which sucked because I'd spent hours in the practice range, hours in a deathmatch, hours learning maps, agents, and utility, just to load into a game and feel completely clueless.
I don't know what the heck I'm doing.
That night, I went to bed feeling defeated. For the first time during the challenge, I didn't want to keep playing. There were only 9 days left, and honestly, part of me wanted to quit. I was tired, my confidence was gone, and it felt like no matter how much I practiced, there was always another mistake waiting to punish me. But I wasn't about to stop with only 9 days left. And besides, I still hadn't beaten my record of 29 kills. So I grabbed a fresh cup of coffee, loaded it into the practice range, and got back to work.
My ultimate's ready.
I queued up for an unrated game on Haven, playing Sova. I went into this game feeling a little down about my progress, but I wasn't going to let that stop me. Round 1 started, Jet got us onto site, and I placed the bomb down. I then shifted my focus towards short, where I was able to pick Yoru off. By that time, the bomb had already been planted for a while, so we just walked off site and let it explode. The second round was the same. We walked on site and planted the bomb, and I got a kill in the process. The rounds went past, and we were doing pretty well. One round, we planted the bomb, and then Jet and I played post plant, but unfortunately I peeked solo and died to Raze, which then she was able to solo us out. The rest of the game went pretty well, and we were able to finish it off with a nice 13-11 score.
Did you?
The final few days of the challenge went by like a breeze. I know I let that one day of bad playmaking get to my head, but from then on, I was doing pretty good. I stopped thinking about mechanics, I wasn't panicking during fights anymore, I wasn't overthinking my abilities, and for the first time since starting this challenge, Valorant actually started to feel natural. So for my final games, there was only one thing left to do: drop 30 kills. A week earlier, I genuinely thought getting 30 kills would be easy, but the better I got, the better my opponents got as well. And suddenly, every match became harder. Back on day 0, I could barely control recoil. Half the maps looked completely foreign, and every gunfight felt like a coin flip. But now, I actually understood the game. Not perfectly, obviously. I still made dumb plays, I still whiffed easy shots, and I'm pretty sure my teammates still hated me half the time. But I finally understood why good players were good. And queuing into my final game, I could feel the difference. The confidence was there, the patience was there, and for the first time, I genuinely felt decent at Valorant. I was playing really well. But no matter how hard I tried, that 30 kill game never came. Every time I got close, I'd throw around, miss an easy shot, or just run into someone who was just way better than me. It bothered me at first, because I wanted this perfect ending where I dropped 30 kills, got match MVP, and prove I'd mastered the game. But after thinking about it, that wouldn't really represent this challenge at all, would it? Because nothing about learning Valorant was clean, or perfect, or easy. Most of the challenge was just confusion, failure, and slowly figuring things out one mistake at a time. And that's what made Valorant fun. At first I thought Valorant was just all aim. But after this 30 days, I realized it's really a game about learning from mistakes, staying calm under pressure, and slowly becoming more confident over time. So, is Valorant better than League of Legends? You know, I'm not honestly sure. League will probably always be the game I'm most comfortable with, but Valorant reminded me what it feels like to learn again, to struggle at something, to slowly improve, and for the first time in months, playing games actually felt fun again. Things didn't go according to plan, obviously. Nothing in life ever does. And besides, I think I might have been playing the wrong game mode this entire time.